Welcome back to We Don't Color on the Dog. My new book is out, Right Idea, Right Time. The fight for Pensacola's Maritime Park. A big player in all this. Actually, the guy who had the front row seat to this fight for the park is my good friend and CPA extraordinaire, Jeff DeWeese. Jeff, thank you for coming on.
Well, thanks for having me. First time I've ever podcasted.
Well, Lumpy should give you the lessons. He's already done this once. This is, putting the book together. It was 20 years ago that your family moved back here. You were with GE in Germany, came back, went to work for O'Sullivan Creel with Mort O'Sullivan, and you were put in the middle of all this. That's why I think you've got such a unique spot because um, you were in a room which I consider giants of the community.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting to be there. I mean, when you look around who was sitting there, and here I am, fresh back to Pensacola, you know, right after moving back to the United States, and literally having listened to the hurricane on the internet. And these guys said, we got to turn the corner. We got to do something different. And you're going to be a part of it. And I said, what do you want me to do? Whatever we tell you to do.
Well, the thing that what I enjoyed about this, because you and I remember I think we ran into Seville at something and we just started talking and hit it off right away. You had a unique spot because you were helping manage uh, the retail side of this as far as being a part of being, managing or keeping up with the door to door campaign to first get people to understand what the park was about. We had Save Our City knocking on doors to stop a referendum, and y'all took a unique approach. Y'all were knocking on doors uh, to let them know what it was, so they got to start hearing both sides pretty early.
That's right. That was right. And, Quint through the whole process was about we have to get the message out. And so, we walked the neighborhoods, we gave material out. We had days where people could come down to the park and take a tour. I mean, and it was just overgrown at that point. And just getting people to see what could be. That was all we were trying to do.
Yeah, it is. One reason I wanted to do the book, Jeff, is that one, I didn't want these stories to go away. That I wanted to because you and I are 20 years older, but there were a lot of people that were already old when we started it, and I wanted to get it before they forgot what happened. And it's hard for people to understand the climate of Pensacola. It was kind of a depressing place, wasn't it?
It was. And downtown was nothing like
Right.
it is now. Nothing. You never would have had any issues with downtown parking, day, night, ever.
Well, the mall, everybody, you had friends from out of town, you took them to the mall
That's
or the
right.
beach. Everybody, yeah, would go to the beach, but the other place, when it was raining, you would go to the mall. That's all you had to offer
Right.
someone.
Or the Navy Museum,
Yeah, right, right.
which is the
The
great babysitter of Pensacola.
Really, truly, you look at it, you got to be around Jack Federman, Admiral Federman. And
I did.
in the book, I describe him as a rock star. And it's kind of hard for people to understand what a big deal he was.
He was, and he had a presence. When he was
Hmm.
in the room, you knew you were around somebody that mattered and knew people. He could pick up the phone and call anybody. And
Yeah,
that was
John
something.
Glenn, John McCain,
David Hartman,
yes,
you
right,
know, I mean, it was like, oh, we'll get David Hartman to do this. Okay. Yeah. You want to call him or me?
right, right. Yeah, it was such a unique. He was unique in how he approached everything because it was like everything. I talked to Miller Caldwell about it, and Miller talked about that Jack had this way of getting you excited about something, and you just had to help him. There was no,
He did.
he would get so excited that you'd want to be a part of it.
Well, back when I was getting to spend time with him, he was still very involved out at the museum. And he called me out to the museum for a meeting. And he said, we'll meet for lunch. And I was like, Okay, so we met at the QB bar out there, and he ordered his little doggy and a root beer float. And to this day, 20 years later, I do not go to the museum without having a little doggy and a root beer float.
The other thing, as we go through this process, and you and I will do other podcasts because it's just so much to try to capture. But the other thing that you did that was there was a group that got organized called Save Our City, and they were the ones that many of the same players that had stopped the Trillium Project a few years earlier successfully, the first time a referendum had ever been held to overthrow a city council vote, and it was successful, hugely successful. They reorganized into Save Our City. They had weekly meetings that were, for a while at least, were open to the public. And you would go to every one of those meetings. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, they were down at the Bayview Senior Center, and they would have a meeting every Tuesday night, and it was an open meeting. And so I would just go sit and listen. I wouldn't interrupt, I wouldn't be rude. I just wanted to hear what they were talking about. And they all had the same format. They would have an opening act, then they would have the message, then they would pass the offering plate. I mean, it was an eclectic group of people, all people that were well known in Pensacola.
Mm-hmm.
Some people didn't necessarily want me to know who they were, especially as the reason I was there became more clear. And then, like Charlie Fairchild, I had known him since I was 4 years old.
Right.
I grew up with his son. We were great friends. I just saw him at our high school reunion 2 weeks ago. And, I'm Facebook friends with Charlie Fairchild. Not so with Mr. Donovan, but
Well, it was interesting because what would happen is you would go to the meetings, you would call me as soon as you got out. We would, that was as really sort of the real start of the blog. It'd been around a little bit longer, but hadn't I didn't really know how to use it. And so we would start putting everything on the blog that happened at the meeting. And they were sort of stuck because they kept trying to say that the city and the Quint and Admiral Federman and all that group had been doing everything behind closed doors. So they made a big deal about being public. They couldn't kick you out, or at least that's what we thought, until it got a little bit, we started getting some momentum.
yes, I mean, they had the meeting, and then I would spend Tuesday night talking with you. Then I'd have to try to get Quint wherever he was and give him a brief. And then 7 o'clock the next morning, I was in Mort's office giving everybody a breakdown. Where are they at? What are they doing? And the thing is they were having a meeting, so they just talked about, here's where we're going to be collecting signatures. Here's the next steps. Here's what we have available fund wise. Here's how much we think things are going to cost. It was an interesting process, but I tell you, there's not one person that was at that meeting that if I see them on the street, I can't stop and have a conversation. I actually served on the Soil and Water Conservation District Board with Ann Bennett. So
I
we
think that's
became colleagues.
that's one of the things that people were passionate on both sides, and I think those that were opposed, I mean, we know some of the tactics were not fair, and they got stuck into a rut of just saying whatever they thought was going to win rather than really delivering facts. And I think that caught up with them, and I think the blog had a part of that, to be able to reveal it. But I've talked to a lot of them too, and as a whole, the average person that got involved, they were really convinced that the city couldn't afford the park, and it was a really different mindset. Today, we don't worry about bond issues. We know that it's going, if you invest in yourself and in infrastructure, you usually get it back,
Right.
multiple folds
Mm-hmm.
of it.
That's right.
But then it was sort of we could only do one thing, and whatever we wanted to do, they didn't want to see happen.
And that was the thing that would always trip them up. Why not? Why can't we have this? Because Quint made it evident it wasn't going to cost the city. He was going to cover most of the costs to get things up. And then when the Pelicans, he went to the affiliated baseball, that's when some of the people with Save Our City started to see, wow, this is now it's not the Pelicans, it's affiliated baseball.
Yeah. When you look at this, Jeff, it was a long process. I mean, they started talking about right after Hurricane Ivan was when the first talks began about trying to do something on that piece of property. We went through a year of 2005 of figuring out how to pay for it, going through studies, and then we had, all the time Save Our City knew they were going to do a referendum, but they wanted to make Quint keep spending money, keep jumping through hoops. Then we get through the hot summer of 2006 and the day of the election. Talk about the day of the referendum vote. What was that?
It was really we really felt like it wasn't, there was no way we were going to lose. We had our ground game, we had our poll watchers calling in who had voted, who had not voted. Juanita was amazing. Looking at the grassroots that became, it was all about getting to that finish line that night. And it was something we knew about how long it would not take all night long for us to get an answer back. I think there was confidence, but anytime there's an election process, you never know. I mean, because these were not two candidates, this was two causes, which, you're passionate with a cause where you may not be passionate about a candidate.
Well, and we kind of knew from the polling that it was easier to get people to vote no on something like this than to vote yes.
Well, and that's one thing I learned from Bruce Barcelow was
Mm-hmm.
people want to support something. They naturally want to support something positive. And so, as long as we kept everything framed positive, we provided more information, we talked about the future, we talked about kids and their opportunities. That's something that no matter who you are, you really want where you live to be a better place. And, doing nothing, that was the thing that you could always go back. Well, give us an alternative. I don't know how many times we said, if not this, then what? And they would say nothing.
Yeah, that was one of the weaknesses. Well,
Yeah,
how do you like the book?
I like it. It's a good read. You can go right through. I didn't remember all of the things you chronicled that were happening in Pensacola around that time. I mean, the Oriskany being sunk in the Gulf and all the hurricanes and Katrina and everything that happened there.
Well, and we lost the Emerald Coast Classic. We
Right.
lost the golf tournament. I mean, there were a lot of negative things happening that were feeding into this poor self-image that we had as a city.
Well,
So
yeah,
I gave it my best shot.
one thing I would love for you to do on a podcast is to sit and have a nice long conversation on with Quint and Rishi and ask them how many times in their marriage Rishi has thought that he was crazy. Okay? And people don't believe it. Quint Studer cannot write a check. To this day,
Right,
he
right,
cannot write one.
right.
So, I mean, I would love to have been a fly on their wall with all of the things they brought to our city. Oh, you know what? I'm going to buy the News Journal building and build a huge apartment complex so that we have more people downtown. What? That's not a hospital.
Right.
You can't
It's
hold it.
amazing.
It is. I mean, we got this sewage treatment plant. We can move it. Well, let's buy that land. What? I mean, that they by far of anybody in the last century have transformed Pensacola. I mean,
True. Very true.
everything that has happened is born out of this project. I mean, you can really take it back to that's where the fundamentals were. That's where money was start to be spent on infrastructure in the city of Pensacola. It was when businesses wanted to be downtown and part of me wants them to have to demolish the old stadium at UWF while they're under construction for the new one so that we can go back down to the Maritime Park for a couple of years.
Right.
That was just
Great.
fun.
Well, Jeff, we were a part of history, and hopefully with the book, we at least, I feel like we need to get these stories down. So thank you for helping me with it. You were a great interview for it, and a great interview today. So thank you
Well,
so much.
every time we talk about it, I always think of one more thing that came up, like with the football. Charlie
Hmm.
Fairchild and Marty Donovan never said, "Oh, that's a baseball stadium. It's a baseball stadium." No, it's the largest movie theater in Pensacola, Florida. It's a football stadium. It's a baseball stadium. It's the largest Egg Fest cooking arena in America. I mean, so much has happened there. Don't tell me it's truly a multi use facility.
That's what I think. Right. That's sort of it's sort of, this is my big I told you so. Jeff, thank you for coming on. I appreciate it.
Not at all. Talk to you soon.
Take care.
Thanks for watching, and to keep up with what's going on, be sure and subscribe. Just click on the little dog to the right and click the subscribe button. You can also like this video and click on the bell, which will notify you of new content. This really helps the channel grow. We appreciate you.